Thanks for joining us, fight fans. It's your boy Ak.
And I'm Barack the Boxing Bully.
A lot of boxing this weekend, a lot of entertaining boxing this weekend all across the board. We were front center in San Antonio for the return of Ryan Garcia. Many people have opinions on the internet on his performance. Barack, were you satisfied? I want to start with that.
Listen, is that a legitimate question? Because can we say, are we satisfied? Okay, so when the Knicks play the Nets and they win by 12, but you want them to win by 25, or you want to see more dunks, do we have the right to say, okay, you know what, I didn't like that win, but he won? I think at the end of the day, he won. Now, if you want to just give my stupid opinion on his performance, of course I think it could have been a better performance. Who doesn't want to see what? A knockout. But the thing is also, Ak, it's like, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. He went in there trying to knock Tego out every single round, 12 rounds, nothing but power shots. The man threw he landed 165 punches, and 160 of them were power shots. That means what, 5 jabs? You know, he barely threw jabs, barely had any feints. So he was in there trying to please us, trying to knock the guy out. Now, could it have been a better game plan? More jabs, more feints to set up the knockout? Yes. But at the end of the day, he did try and get the knockout for 12 freaking rounds, and we didn't get what we wanted to see, but he got the win.
And that's because you're not always going to knock everybody out. You can go down the history of the sport. I'm talking about guys that had long careers, knockout artists. They didn't knock everybody out. And not to mention that when you're fighting a guy who is an awkward fighter, who has mastered the art of survival. Look, there's no question that from the rip, to your point, Barack, Ryan Garcia had one goal and one goal in mind. That was to knock Tego's head off. And earlier in that fight, for the most part, Tego was running. Yes, I'm going to say it. I don't use that word often. Running and clinching in close quarters. When there was time to engage in close quarters, there was a lot of clinching going on by Tego. Now, yes, Ryan could have had a better game plan and gave himself a little bit more space and not smothered his shots. But Ryan's a guy who likes to execute what he predicted. He wanted to land the right hand. He wanted to knock him out with the right hand. He tried to throw the right hand hard even when he was in the right position, the right distance. And jab gives you a better distance. But remember, this is the first training camp with Joe Gushin. One training camp, long layoff, awkward fighter who was in there to survive. Now, I don't want to take all the credit away from Tego. There were times where he tried to engage later on in the fight when there was no other option there. But for the most part, he wasn't taking risks in that fight. So if you're fighting a guy who's not going to take risks, who's going to clinch, who's in there to survive for the most part, and a long layoff with a new trainer, what do you think you're going to get? Fireworks or an explosive knockout? No, it didn't play out that way. There were twice that he hurt him. He possibly could have knocked him out if one spin or one slip would have went the wrong way. The fight could have ended quickly. Right. So he was able to hurt him, but the fight didn't end in knockout. So it wasn't.
You know what though? I believe. Sorry to cut you off. I believe that this is the reason why fighters don't say, hey, I'm going there and I'm going to knock this person out. This is the reason why fighters say, no, I'm not looking for the knockout, but if it comes, then I'll take advantage of that opportunity. You know, because when you talk for weeks that I'm going to knock somebody out between the first and third round, then that's what we expect. And then it's only right for the fans to hold you to that. You know what I mean? Because that's their expectations. They paid to see this, and they're there on the stands, and they want to see a knockout. Now, also, let's think about this. If the guy lost his first fight, but hasn't lost in 30-something fights, and here he have you, and you don't know if you can really knock a person out. And that's the thing. No matter how much power you have, no matter how much speed you have, you never know if you can knock somebody out. Now, let's just talk about guys from Accra, Ghana. You're talking about Ike Corte. He lost to guys like Vernon Forrest, Winky Wright, Oscar De La Hoya, guys like that, great fighters. Nobody could stop him. He had 4 losses. Nobody could stop him. Joshua Clottey, 4 losses. Nobody could stop him. You know, those kind of fighters from Ghana, we already know are tough. Azuma Nelson, only guy to stop him was Sanchez, Salvador Sanchez, and that was the 15th round. All his other fights, he couldn't get stopped. So this guy was already somebody who probably wasn't going to lay down anyway. Ryan caught him with a perfect shot and couldn't drop him.
Not to mention, Barack, when you mentioned that for weeks leading up to the fight, you're predicting a knockout, believe it or not, that psychologically affects your opponent and makes you more tentative. Now, of course, the fans want to hear that. That's entertainment value leading up to a fight. So I like it. But in reality, that also can affect the opponent's approach in the ring. Now, sometimes you got to sleep, guys. You got to not speak so much about what you're going to do. Go in there and box and let that come. Let him feel more comfortable. Let him not have in the back of his mind, this dude is trying to knock me out with that right hand. I'm going to be less risky. I'm going to be really aware. And guess what? I'm going to survive. And that's what we saw on Saturday night. So there's a lot of variables that play a part in a man's psyche leading up to a fight. And that obviously affected Tego. No serious engagement in that fight from his part. And that's going to affect the outcome of the fight. Overall, I think Ryan had a very good performance. He showed great condition in there. Late in the fight, he was still throwing hard shots. So credit to his strength and conditioning coach. And let's move on to his trainer, Barack, Joe Goosen, who also had pressure leading up to this fight. Regardless of, whether you feel he did or he didn't, he's taking over Eddie Reynoso, who was what, two-time trainer of the year in a row, 3 times, who knows? The guy has the #1 pound-for-pound fight in the world. Now he's going to your camp. You're taking control, so your fight is supposed to look better than he did in the last few times out. So Joe had pressure. And I'm not going to put it all on Joe because it's one training camp, one fight. And honestly, I haven't watched this to hear what instructions Joe was giving Ryan in the corner. But overall, I did see some things that Ryan did differently. He fights the same way. It's hard to change a guy's style over one fight. Not that Joe wants to do that, but I do see some of the things that Joe tried to implement in his game plan.
Hey, listen, I feel like this. Styles make fights. Yes, Eddie Reynoso gave you 5 wins, 5 knockouts, but those are 5 different opponents. Once again, we have a fighter that's from Ghana. We had a tough fighter. We have an awkward fighter. He proved that he was tough, got hit flush, did not go down, had the strong enough legs to stay up. So it's really not, we can't put this on Joe. And plus, like you said, it's the first training camp. We got to see gradually how does it go, and we can't say just because you didn't get a knockout, it wasn't a victory. And I think that's how people are acting because we didn't see a knockout. Oh, is Joe a good trainer? He got the victory. He dominated.
Unanimously.
Two of the judges gave him 11 rounds. One judge gave him 10. Plus, he got a knockdown in the second round. He won the fight. That's it. That means Joe is good. Ryan's good. Yes,
very good.
Maybe people who are skillful and they actually know the sport, they can see, okay, Ryan needs to do this better. Ryan needs to do that. He even admitted it afterwards. He said, listen, I'm still learning. You know what I mean? But every fighter can say that, even in victories.
Hey, Barack, I'll add to that. Let's think about all of the lightweights that are at the forefront of this sport outside of Ryan. Tank Davis, Teofimo Lopez, Lomachenko, Devin Haney, Kambosos. Can any of those guys go in there and blow Tego out the water and knock him out? Here's a guy who probably won't be knocked out by any other top lightweight. He fought one of the fastest, hardest punching lightweights in the world and lasted 12 rounds. To your point, Barack, unanimous decision. Where does he go from here? That's the question.
All right, Ak, I'm glad you mentioned Gervonta Davis because, he's a lightweight fighter. He has 2 fights at lightweight, okay. But he's a powerful fighter. He's a guy whose name was mentioned with Ryan. But look what, you already know that he has an issue with Mayweather. He's talking about, he's been tweeting a lot of different things, saying that he wants to leave Mayweather Promotions because he wants bigger fights. I guess that's the reason why. Have you seen what Oscar said to TMZ Sports? He says, Tank Davis, I heard that he's leaving Mayweather. So hey, give me a call and we'll make the fight happen next. I wouldn't mind making a 3-fight deal with him just to make that fight happen. Now that's Oscar to TMZ Sports. Oscar wants Tank Davis. Now we're talking.
Yeah. Now that's a fight that actually, the entire boxing world will want to see, regardless of what they feel about what Ryan Garcia did with Tego. That's a huge fight. These are two of the youngest stars in the sport, probably the two biggest, youngest, most known fighters in the sport today. Some people feel like, oh, they want to see Ryan against somebody else first. At the end of the day, look, let's strike while the iron's hot. If Oscar can secure a deal with Tank, or one fight deal for Ryan Garcia, I say let's do it. Let's do it big, fourth quarter this year.
Especially since the belts are tied up right now. We're just talking about two guys with big names. But my question is, why does Tank Davis have to leave Mayweather to make this fight happen? Why this fight couldn't happen a long time ago? I say no matter who's the promotional company, right? No matter who's the promotional company, just make that fight.
Yeah, just make it happen. Ryan Garcia, we just want to see him in the ring again. He said he wants to fight another 2 times this year, possibly 3 times. Let's secure another fight sometime in the summer. Hope it's a big name.
Okay, if you want more on that fight or Ryan Garcia's future, guess where you got to go? You got to go to Dazn News because they got you covered.